You're back here with Christian. Thanks so much for joining. I'm local here in Abbotsford. I've been using cameras for up to 10 years since high school, and I figured it's time to make some videos. How to use these things. They're called DSLRs. They're wonderful little machines. Big, complicated, scary, but not anymore because we're going to tell you how to use them. In this video, it's going to be an educational time of learning how to use one of the three components in the exposure triangle. Whenever we take our camera and we see this full auto, that's a bad sign. We do not want to be using full auto because that's basically the camera telling us what it sees, and we don't really get an option on what we're doing. That's called junk. We don't want to create junk. We want to create art. We're focusing on the second setting required to manage your exposure on your camera. If you can guess what that one is, I'll give you bonus points. It's this one right in the middle, the one that says F 4.0. That's called the Aperture. Aperture. You learn how to spell it right. It's important. Nothing is worse than spelling aperture incorrectly. Aperture can be one of the more confusing settings to use in the camera, but what we have to understand is that it is a component of how the lens works with the camera body to be able to receive light into it. Aperture very specifically is talking about a hole inside the lens that has some blades inside of it. The better quality lens you have, the more blades that are going to be there to make a perfect circle. But you can never really get a perfect circle. All you really need to know is that the cheap plastic lenses like this one, they don't have many blades, so you're going to get less quality on your image. So the best way to depict aperture is the hole inside your lens and how big or how open it is, or as we call it, how fast your lens is. I know it might be a little bit confusing with shutter speed, which is also talking about slow and fast. If you have a fast lens, it means that your hole can get really, really big. Here's one of the best ways to describe this. This good old strainer is your aperture. It's what it looks like inside the lens. As you adjust your aperture, it's going to open or close based on which way you adjust it. We're going to, as much as we want to, have kind of, an open aperture. We want lots of light getting in there because that usually means a brighter image, more detail, more color, more smiling faces, all that kind of jazz, all right? So we're going to depict this with the f-stop that we have here. F-stop, aperture, fast lens, all kind of the same interchangeable words. As you can see right here, using the f-stop, and I'm going to use my thumb on this camera. I'm going to change the aperture by rotating the dial in a certain direction. And in this case, I am going clockwise. Now at this point, I've hit the maximum f-stop, the maximum aperture I can reach. So we have a smaller hole with a bigger f-stop. Whoa, wait, hold on a sec. What was that? Let me help you out, don't worry. Uncle Chicken is coming to help you out here. I'm going to adjust my aperture one more time, and I want you to notice that the f-stop of f/22 is the smallest you can get. As I lower my f-stop, decrease my f-stop, the hole will open up. So at an f4, you have a very wide hole, which means lots of light is coming in. If we go back to the high f-stop, higher aperture, we're going to notice the hole is closing. So big number, small hole. Small number, big hole. Pretty simple, right? The question is, when do we want to have a big hole in our lens, and when do we want to have a small hole in our lens? What is the difference? Well, as you can imagine, having a bigger hole means more light is coming through. And having a small hole means less light is coming through. We're not going to get into all the nitty gritties right now. This is just for you to be able to use this camera with confidence. One more time, we're going to go back into this live view mode here where you're actually going to see some color. You're going to see what the image looks like. We've got a shutter speed of 1/50th. 1/50th is what we're going to stay at for now. If I was to increase my aperture, increase my f-stop, right now at f4, we have a very wide hole, which means there's lots of light coming through. As we increase our f-stop and we make our hole smaller, you're going to notice the picture gets pretty dark, almost down to black. So we've got a very small hole right now. I'm going to lower this aperture back down to f4, and you're going to notice as the picture brightens, we'll get bigger and bigger, which means that more light is coming through. You got to check the last video to make sure you understand that, but we're getting the same result. You're going to notice the shutter speed increases and the picture becomes darker. We're at 1/800th of a second and we're pretty much completely black. As we went from 1/800th of a second to 1/30th of a second, we noticed that our picture got brighter. Instead of using shutter speed, we've used aperture to adjust the light inside of our camera. We're telling our camera what we want it to see rather than it telling us what it sees. Right? That's how we take control and confidence over these DSLRs. That's about all we really want to touch on for this video. But the one thing I do have to mention inside of this is depth of field. When you change your aperture, you change what is in focus inside of the picture. It's gonna change what's in focus, and that's the big kicker there. So there's a lot of factors to consider, and we'd love to go over that in another video. I hope you found this video educational and allows you to have confidence with your DSLR.